Babs. I remember playing guitar here once. It was for the women of Temple Beth Am, and it was in the big social hall, and I was playing some Bach prelude, and all of a sudden the microphone just kind of decided to jump and hit my guitar. It was not a pleasant moment. Anyways, I'm just here to pass the baton. But before I do so, I wanted to mention that I was invited to write for a platform online called Consequence Forum, and it's all anti-war, and they're always looking for people to submit or write things. So if this is interesting to you, let me know. I have contacts. I am now an editor, and I must tell you, to be a foreigner, an immigrant in the language, and to get invited to be an editor, it was like, at first I said yes, and then I said, no, I can't do this. And then they talked me into it. And it was based only on one poem that I submitted to this Consequence Forum, and that they will publish in their new edition. So check it out, become a member. You don't have to pay to get there, to be a subscriber to what they do. It was started by, I understand, by a Vietnam vet who came home and wrote about his experiences of war, and found that nobody would publish him because his experiences were difficult. And so he started this forum, and when he died, it was taken over by the editor. His name is Matthew Kryniak. So I just wanted to mention that. And I wanted to mention one more thing. I think we are at the end of our 5th season at the Buffalo Corner. And there's one person in this room who has not only supported me, but many others. I've been in Buffalo for over 30 years. And all that time, you can write, keep going, to this, to that, and who has come to the Buffalo Corner every year and done things for us. So I wanted in some way to just say thank you. So it's a small, there's a buffalo thing, sponge candy and little chocolate buffaloes. Thank you. And a bottle of good Italian wine before the tariffs make them impossible. Enjoy.
Thank you.
And now it's all yours.
Thank you, Gunilla. When I first saw you read, I was at a reading where anybody could read, and anybody did. And then after 20 minutes or so, I saw you read, and I thought, at last. I'm not, okay. I thought, at last, there's a poet. An actual poet here. So you have been my friend. I love you. I love Daniel. You are family to me. So thank you. In Buffalo, we have a solid mystery writing contingent. And we come here once a year, and we go other places as well. Usually in May, which is Mystery Novel Month. This year I had a conflict and we had to cancel May, so we switched it to April for here. And then I ended up in the hospital, which made me unable to travel to the conflict I had. So it's one of those things that happens. In any case, before we begin, I would like to acknowledge the passing of our dear friend Susan Solomon, who was part of our mystery crew here for many, many years. Susan passed away on March 1st after a short illness. I forgot to take my medicine on the way in. I have my little drink there, so that's fine. One of those things that has to do with aging. In any event, we wanted to acknowledge Susan, who was a friend for many years. I first met Susan, let's see, I've been retired since 2013, and for 4 or 5 years before I retired, I did an adult writing workshop at Just Buffalo. Susan was part of that workshop, and she was writing, she was a retired lawyer, so she was writing a variety of types of stories, and we had a discussion one day, and I said, "You ever thought about writing a mystery?" And so she did, and she sold it and had a series, and things were going well in that regard, and she would always say, "It's your fault, I'm writing mysteries." I said, "Oh, okay, I'll take that as a pat on the back." But Susan took ill in February, and Shara Thompson, another writer who was part of that writing group, told me, and we ended up visiting her at the same time in the hospital, and essentially it became a matter of saying goodbye, sadly. So we miss Susan here, and I know Therese and Lisa, and recently Steve. We were, part of the whole writing contingent, and Susan was a part of that. So a moment to Susan. I have not thought about how we should do tonight. I've been busy running from pillar to post for a million little things, as they say. So let me introduce tonight's writers. I'll let you all come up, and then we can talk about who wants to go first and how things play out. So, Therese Papens, you might want to come up so the camera can see you.
Okay. Hello, everyone. And I wanted to acknowledge that Susie was a good friend, and I met her through Just Buffalo Workshop with Cheryl also. And, my heart goes out to her.
And Lisa Marie Redmond.
Thank you and hello. I'm honored to be back here again as a guest, and I also would like to say I will miss Susan. She was part of my writing journey from the very beginning. I ran into her when they used to have Indie Author Day at the downtown library, and I have a picture of her and I together before my first book even came out. So she was with me, and she is still with me since the very beginning. So, Susan.
Steve?
Hello, everyone. My name is Steve Iwano, and it's a pleasure to be back here. I think this may be my 3rd time reading, and it's always been a wonderful experience. So I'm looking forward not only to read tonight, but hearing all the other authors read as well. So thank you.
Okay, what will happen is we will invite authors up, and I'll let them do a moment to talk about themselves and their work. And okay, let's start with Steve and Therese. We will, Steve, call it. Heads it is. Nope, tail. Oh, no, it's tails. It's one of those. I'm sorry, it's one of those quarters for a state, and there's a face on the back, but it's a small face. So it's tails. Therese, you're up first.
That worked out well for me anyway. All right, so I'm going to explain a little bit. I basically started out as a poet and as a fiction writer, and somehow I got involved in writing mysteries, but also I've written historical fiction. So tonight I'm going to start with, as you might know, I have the Dan Corelli series of mysteries. And I was hoping that this last volume would be out, but unfortunately it's not out yet, but I'll give you a preview so you'll have a chance to have an idea. So Dan Corelli is in Budapest, Hungary. And for those of you who don't know him, a period of time ago, my publisher sent out a kind of interview with Dan Corelli, who is a fictional character, but anyway, this is an interview with him. And one of the questions from the publisher was, introduce yourself to our readers. Where do you fit into the story? What should we know about you? I'm Dan Corelli, detective on the Buffalo Police Force. I am the story. I'm a good cop, but hey, I'm not perfect. I can't get it together with my relationships, and maybe I have just a tiny drinking problem. Okay, here, what do you see in your future? So in this particular novel, Dan Corelli is in Budapest, Hungary. So for those of you who might be interested in when the book comes out, there will be a lot of surprises in Dan's life. And then say a movie producer comes knocking. What actor would you like to play you and why? George Clooney. People say I'm hot for my age. I go to the gym and keep in shape. So that's the little introduction of Dan Corelli. What I'm going to do is I'm going to just read a very short section of the new novel. And I'm hoping that should be out maybe in time for Mystery Month. Maybe not. I'm hoping. Okay, so Dan Corelli is traveling with his sister to Budapest. Okay, the long-awaited trip was finally taking place. They're arriving at the airport. Maggie looked out the window. We're landing. It's hard to see anything. It looks cloudy. Dan stretched over her to see out the window. Airports look the same everywhere, as if he knew. He hadn't traveled much, and this was his first trip abroad to visit the homeland of his grandfather. It was a trip they had talked about hundreds of times, but finally, Maggie's cancer diagnosis made it clear there wasn't a forever in their timeline. Dan didn't believe in forever anyway. As a police detective in Buffalo, New York, he'd seen too many lives cut short. So he's in the hotel, and then it's the next morning. In the morning, Maggie texted her sons to let them know they had arrived safely. Oh no, Maggie said as she looked at the messages on her phone. What's the matter? Dan immediately sat up. He looked over at his sister stretched out on the bed. I got this message from Chelsea. Who's Chelsea? Chelsea Donahue, my friend from work. Maggie had been a surgical nurse for many years. We worked the same shift. Her son Matthew is missing. He was backpacking around Germany in August. He got to Hungary and decided to stay and started teaching English here. Backpacking, and then what happened? Too much fun? Drugs? Sex? Dan, come on, Chelsea is really worried. It's the middle of October. When did she last hear from him? Almost 2 weeks ago. She's going crazy. He's never done that. He's a good kid. Maggie read her brother the messages. It hasn't been that long, Dan responded. No, in Buffalo, can't you report a missing person right away? Maggie reminded him. Chelsea can't get here. Her husband Jake is sick. The consulate knows, and the police here are investigating, but she says they're not doing enough. She's asking for help. And that's me? Maggie nodded. Looks like it. Your mission, should you decide to accept. Dan sighed. I don't know how much I can do. It's Hungary, not home. I don't know the laws or anything about police work here. Google, Dan. My very up-to-the-minute sister. This is your big vacation, the once-in-a-lifetime trip. You're supposed to be having fun. Are you sure you want to get involved? I want to do something to help. Chelsea sent me his address. It's an apartment, and the landlady's name is Ann Pastor. Okay, so one more section, and then we're moving along. So, of course, Dan Corelli accepts this challenge, and he tries to investigate some of this young man Matthew's connections. So he goes to different places where the kids were hanging out. Leaving the bar, Dan got turned around. He didn't know which street to follow. He turned down one block and was immediately grabbed from behind by two men who pushed him to the ground. Dan was smart enough not to carry his passport or a lot of cash. The men grabbed his watch and the florins in Hungarian currency he had stuffed in his wallet. His phone was safely inside his jacket pocket. They ran off just as Dan was getting up off the ground. In the past, he might have tried to fight them off, but he was tired. Jet lag and the uncertainty of being in a foreign country kept him from acting. He smoothed his jacket and tried to shake off his anger. He was not going to tell Maggie. The trip was special, but with Matthew's disappearance, things were taking a different tone. She didn't need more problems to think about. He decided to report the theft to the police. Dan wasn't a law and order man for nothing. He took careful note of the street he was on, and armed with that information, looked up the closest police station on the phone. Renbergsegg was the name of the police station. Dan was grateful the thieves hadn't gotten his phone. At the police station, a heavy-set older man with dark hair and dark circles under his eyes, Officer Molnar, took down the information. His name was on the desk. He barely looked up from the form he was filling out. Happens all the time, just kids or sometimes immigrants. They aren't going to hurt you. They just want money. It sounds like they didn't get much. He spoke in heavily accented English. Glad the officer spoke English, Dan ventured to ask, "What do you do about a missing person?" The officer looked up. "Who?" "A young American male." He sighed. "They usually turn up. We take the information of the central office and go from there. The information is there in the country." Dan took the moment to explain. "I'm a police detective in Buffalo, New York, Dan Corelli." Okay, and then, let's see. All right. Okay, I think I lost the page. In which case, anyway, the investigation starts to take place, and Dan Corelli is totally involved in this case, and it gets more, each step takes place. So it's a little bit of a procedural, but set in another country, with the complications of Hungary taking place too. Okay, so I hope you're interested in following up with that, and thank you very much.
Let me know when it's out. Budapest is one of my favorite cities. I absolutely love it. It's the reason I watch FBI International, because it's, for the most part, set there. It's a wonderful city. Okay, Steve?
Okay, thank you. Once again, my name is Steve Iwanu, and I'm a Buffalo-based writer. This is my fourth book, After Pearl, is coming out May 1st, and I'd like to read part of it for you tonight. It is the first in the Nicholas Bishop series. So Nicholas Bishop is a private eye. The setting is 1942 Buffalo, New York, and Bishop is an alcoholic. And when the novel opens, he's lost everything. He's lost his detective agency. He's lost his secretary, who he's in love with. He can't find his car. And he wakes up on the floor. He's taken a job as the private detective at the Hotel Lafayette, which to him is the lowest rung on the detective ladder. And he wakes up after a 5-day bender, and this is how the novel begins. This is called After Pearl because it's set after Pearl Harbor for one of the reasons. Nicholas Bishop named the one-eyed dog Jake, even though she was female. Jake seemed like a good name for a pup missing an eye. He couldn't remember where the mutt had come from. When he woke on the floor of his room at the Lafayette Hotel, she sat close by, giving him the single-eye stare. Strong odds said he stole the dog. She didn't weigh much, maybe 10 pounds, easy enough to scoop under his arm as he staggered home. He struggled to a sitting position and waited for the room to stop teetering. Vertebrae ground together as he rolled his head, hoping that would end the pounding between his ears. It didn't. He massaged his closed eyelids. The corneas felt swollen beneath his fingertips. Jake watched all this, never once taking her eye off of him. Bishop took inventory when the world righted itself. Rubbing his chin, whiskers whispered against palm. He tried to guess how long it had been since he'd shaved. 2 days? 3? His shirt cuff was dirty and frayed. He pushed it higher on his arm. The bullet was still on his wrist, the crystal cracked, hands frozen at 2:30. His pewter-handled cane was on the floor next to an empty bottle of Four Roses. The pain in his right foot stabbed sharper than usual. He wondered if it would swell when he unlaced his shoe. No memory of re-injuring it came to him. He patted his suit coat and felt his wallet in the inside pocket and the .38 Detective Special holstered near his heart. The wallet was empty. There were 4 slugs in the snub nose, not 6. He sniffed. It had been fired. He crawled to the bed and pulled himself on the mattress, not bothering with his clothes. Jake hopped up, circled twice, then settled by the footboard, keeping her eye on Bishop, as if her doubts about him were increasing now that he was conscious. Memories were slivered as he tried to recall when he had fired the gun. Day drinking at the Kitty Cat, the revolving bar at the Chesamie, perfume, a blonde, a car ride. No recollections about a one-eyed dog or gunshots. He checked the .38 again. Who had he fired at? Had he hit them? Killed them? The ringing phone was an ice pick to his ear. The only way to stop the pain was by answering. "Hello," Bishop said, his voice raspy. "Coppers." It took a heartbeat for the desk clerk's voice to register. The line died. When it did, Bishop slammed the receiver into its cradle and swung his legs to the floor. The world again tottered. He swallowed bile until his swollen eyes teared. His damaged foot bore weight, but every metatarsal sent ripples of agony with each step. He retrieved his cane and hat from the floor without toppling, something he considered miraculous, and felt grateful to the angel or demon in charge of keeping crippled detectives upright. The hallway was deserted. He limped to the stairwell before the elevator full of cops arrived at his floor. Bishop didn't mind talking to the police, but he wanted to know what they were after before he did. Certain it had nothing to do with a stolen dog, but everything to do with 2 fired slugs. Guilt, thick and dark, oozed through him, but he couldn't tell if it was old remorse or something new, heavier. It was slow going down the stairs. He couldn't outrace the fattest cop, not with his 4F foot. He gripped the railing and leaned on the cane as he eased down each step, moving like a man much older than 30. Jake waited on the landing, tilting her head as if to listen for shouts or thunderous feet descending from the floors above. There were none. It was Buffalo's finest tossing his room, riffling through drawers, pulling suits from hangers, checking pockets for what? His gun? He wished he could walk into the Allendale Theater, buy a nickel bag of popcorn, and watch the last few days of his life projected on the silver screen, certain it would be more informative than any newsreel. When he reached the ground floor, he pushed open the fire exit and was blinded by sunshine reflected off the sidewalks and car fenders. So, it's afternoon, he thought. But was it Monday or Tuesday? Bishop raised his hand to shield his eyes. He didn't see his Packard anywhere. Benny the junk man stood by the hotel's dented garbage cans. His cart was loaded with the day's salvaged items, bundled rags, andirons, dresses, blouses. The clothing looked newer and of better quality than what Benny usually found. Bishop wondered if they'd been pulled from clotheslines. Unlike the mean drunks and meaner children who tormented him, Bishop knew Benny wasn't stupid. He left the best part of himself in the Argonne, still fighting the battle 2 decades later. He spent his days pushing his cart through the streets, crisscrossing Buffalo, searching for discarded treasures. His body passed through the alleys, rummaging for things to pawn, but what remained of his mind was mired in the burning forest, surrounded by the dead and dying. Still, sometimes Benny saw things and heard things that were real. A woman got her purse snatched on Genesee Street. There was a new girl, a real dollface, working at the Michigan Avenue brothel. A big card game was going on above the new Genesee restaurant. He would whisper these truths to Bishop, and the Seamus would pay him for the information, a quarter, 50 cents, maybe $1, even if it had nothing to do with the case he was working. Other times, Bishop asked him to keep an eye out for a certain car or a certain dame. Nobody paid attention to a junk man lingering on a corner, just like no one had paid attention to a 15-year-old Bishop when he started working the streets. The information that Benny provided that was relevant to Bishop's investigation was worth a fin or more, a fortune to a rag collector. Benny was still the good soldier, putting the mission first, and most times getting information the gimpy detective needed. Jake sniffed the junk man's unlaced boots. Benny, what do you know? What do you hear? Benny turned from the garbage pails and squinted as if trying to pick Bishop out of a crowd of gathering ghosts. Recognition registered in stages from the top down, brow wrinkled, eyes widened, mouth curved to a smile. I didn't know you had a dog, Bishop. You see her too? The junk man wasn't sure how to answer. Have you seen my car, Benny, the Packard? Your car? The green convertible. Bishop looked around the hotel alleyway and down Ellicott Street. There's no green car here, Bishop. Keep your eyes open for it, all right? You know which one it is. Let me know if you spot it. You think someone stole your green car? It's probably parked in front of the kitty cat or the chaise. Hopefully it's not in a ditch somewhere. Why would you keep it in a ditch, Bishop? For safekeeping, Bishop said. So, one thing I forgot to tell you is Bishop is handicapped. He's got a foot that was injured. He stepped in front of a taxi cab when he was drunk, and it's not clear if he did it on purpose, if he was pushed, or if it was an accident. But a lot of people think he did it because to get out of the draft for the war. So he's known as Benny the Weasel throughout the book and the community. After Bishop talks to Benny, he tries to find his car. He can't find it. He has no money. So he takes a cab ride to his former secretary's house, who he's been in love with since he met her. The shakes began in earnest in the taxi. Bishop's left hand quivered first. He covered it with his right and hoped the tremor would pass. Both were trembling in a few blocks. By the time the taxi parked in front of Giancarlo Alessi's duplex on 7th Street, Bishop had difficulty handling the cab fare Ira had lent him. There's his friend, Ira the lawyer. You okay, pal? The cabbie asked, taking money from Bishop's jittery palm. Aces, he answered. He struggled with the door handle. When he got it open, Jake hopped out first. Bishop shoved his right hand in his pocket to hide it and gripped his cane as best he could with his spasming left. He couldn't hold the handle firmly and was unsteady on his bum foot. Giancarlo lived in the upper apartment with her mother. Her grandparents lived in the bottom flat. Like Bishop, she had never known her father. An only child, she was raised with strict old country rules, but she was more American than Italian and tended to rebel. Hammett in Hollywood forged her idea of detectives and planted the idea of her becoming one. When she first saw the ad for a secretary at Bishop Investigations, she arrived a half hour early before the office opened, picked the lock with a hairpin, and was seated at the desk typing when Bishop arrived. He hired her on the spot for her initiative. Her legs weren't bad either. There were 5 steps leading to the porch. To climb them, Bishop had to tuck his cane under his arm and pull himself up with both hands by the wrought iron railing. By the time he reached the upper step, alcohol was leaking from his pores. He pushed the apartment bell. Gia, he said when she opened the door, what do you know? What do you hear? She did not unlock the screen, but just crossed her arms and took it all in, the disheveled hair, The paint-soaked sleeve, the one-eyed dog staring at her. Christ, you look like the little tramp with your cane in that mutt. She's my guard dog. Not a very good one, is she? Why are you here, Bishop? I miss you. Then you shouldn't have fired me. Let's try again. Why are you here, Bishop? I didn't fire you. You quit. You stopped paying me. What was I supposed to do? Work for free? I'm no volunteer. I need a little time to get back on my feet, then I'll rehire you. Get back on your foot, you mean? God, you look awful. Are you going to fall down? There's a betting chance. You better come in because I'm not picking you up if you fall. She unhooked the screen door and held it open. Bishop managed the one step into the hallway, wanting to brush against her, but making sure he didn't. The stairs leading to her apartment looked like Everest. God, you can't make it, can you? It might take a little while. I'm a little shaky. It must have been something I ate. All that rye didn't agree with you. Come into my grandparents' apartment. They're at Mass with my mother. Why aren't you with them? Because you led me astray, Bishop. And I'll stop there. Thank you.
I look forward to reading that as well. I love the period flavor. Having been born in 1951, I got to see a lot of that world when it was still in shape in downtown Buffalo. So I like the idea of a period piece set here. And for my publisher, I did my own audiobooks, but I also did 3 other audiobooks for her, a series that was set in San Francisco after World War II. And that was fun to try to capture what the writer was doing when he created the Packards and DeSotos and all the other things that fit the time. Nicely done. Lisa, do you want to flip or you want to just come up?
Let's flip for it.
Okay. All right.
Heads.
Heads it is. Okay. I'm going to read parts of a short story. Now, some of you know my Nickel City series with Buffalo PI Gideon Rhymes, who's an Iraq War vet, like my son David. And my publisher is going out of business. They're remaining open to sell books they've already published, but they're not publishing anything new. So right now I'm working on a standalone novel that is not part of a series for a potential other publisher that said, yeah, I know your work, I'd like to read it. She didn't say, hey, we'd like to continue your series. She figured the series had sold what it was going to sell. So I'm doing that. But the last book in the series was a collection of short stories, published last year, a collection of short stories set in the universe of Gideon Rhymes. And I think 6 or 7 of the stories involved rhymes and the novella that was the title piece. But the other stories were about other characters in his world. And I'm going to read you parts of a short story called The Art of Silence. I was trying to decide today what to read, and I happened to get a text message out of the blue from poet Scott Williams, who is one of my closest friends. And he said, I really love the story, The Art of Silence. And it just came out of the blue, and I thought, okay, let's give that one a shot. And I'll read enough of each section so that you will know when I go into the last section what's happening here. The Art of Silence. TJ. Thomas John Forster was quiet, accustomed to being unseen. In middle school, his crush on Brenda Halley had led him to ride his bike past her corner house every day in the summer before 7th grade in the hope he would glimpse her playing in the yard with her brothers and their golden lab. Once, when she was seated on her front steps, he waved as he pedaled by. She looked at him as if she had never seen him before, even though they had shared every class but gym for the past 3 years. At the start of high school, with a new crush on Lacey Tanner, he expanded his cycling range to include Lacey's North Buffalo neighborhood, where the homes were much nicer than those on his dead-end street perpendicular to Kensington Avenue. By the time he got his license at 16, his mom tossed him the keys a couple evenings a week to take a ride with friends he claimed to have but never brought home. He knew Lacey's world well enough to park one street over and squeeze between the ivy and the back of the garage that belonged to the house behind the Tanners. On his new digital camera, he captured the cheerleaders' makeout sessions with quarterback Nikki Dillon on the secluded patio. A stroke of luck put him there the spring evening they lost their virginity together. Despite a respectable GPA and a science teacher's recommendation, TJ, as Thomas John had begun to refer to himself, skipped applying to college. After graduation, he rode a string of starter jobs into adulthood: trash collector in public parks, landscaping assistant, stockroom worker. His dependability impressed all his employers, though everyone called him Tom and not TJ, even after he introduced himself as such. Over time, he developed a skill set that would make other stalkers envious. Most of his stalking was harmless, or so he told himself. The women he watched and sometimes photographed were young and pretty and careless about such things as shades and blinds. Some lived near him and flounced past him on the street as if he wasn't there. Or they worked in the same places and sashayed by during lunch. Others drank in the same bars and danced close or swapped spit with other men as he looked on. Few of his chosen targets ever spoke to him when, in passing, he said hi. All right. So you get the sense from this that TJ is stalking someone. As it happens, the person he is stalking is Amanda Corso, who is a reporter who appears in the Nickel City novels. She actually has a bit of lust for my detective, but he's not interested. In any case, he finds her in an apartment. He stalks her, records her, and so forth. But she moves, and he finds her new house. He knows she'll be away. The governor would be in Buffalo at a banquet on the second floor of the convention center to showcase her accomplishments 5 weeks before the election. Amanda was sure to be covering the event. That night, in his service uniform, TJ parked around the corner from her house, her new house, on a street with a poorly lit park. He would have at least 2 hours to slip into her basement, connect a base station to her router, and hide microcams upstairs. Grateful for darkness, he climbed out, pulled up his gaiter to hide his face, hopped the fence of the house behind hers, and carried his tool bag to her rear door. In a minute, he was inside, relieved to see nothing like a security camera in the back hall. He waited, listened, heard nothing. Then he eased open the basement door and stepped down into darkness, letting the door click shut behind him. He needed to go all the way down to note where things were in relation to the windows before he chanced using his pocket flashlight. He descended slowly, stopping when he reached the bottom. Was that a cough? It was almost, part 2 is Amanda. It was almost 1 a.m. Her thick black hair warm against her neck. Too warm. Still in navy pantsuit she had worn to the political banquet, Amanda Corso sat in interrogation room 2, waiting for Detective Sergeant Rafael Pinheiro and his partner, Detective Maxine Travis, to return. She had met both homicide cops several times in the past while covering high-profile murders that strayed into her society or political beats. She had interviewed Travis after her lateral transfer to Buffalo PD. As for Pinheiro, Amanda found him attractive and knew his reputation as a ladies' man would preclude a complicated entanglement, which made him exactly the sort of man she preferred when she had a job that demanded so much time. Her last hookup, now a pinpoint in her rearview mirror, she might have flirted with him, but not tonight, when he was so tired and still reeling from her, when she was so tired rather, and still reeling from her discovery. The dark puddle on the basement stairs she thought was water when her foot first hit it, but she turned on the light just as her nose caught the coppery smell. Okay, so let's go down some. Travis and Pinheiro are interviewing her. The door opened and the detective stepped inside. In a gray blazer and jeans, Travis sat first and put a pen, legal pad, and file folder on the table. Despite her dreadlocks and friendly smile, her large amber eyes felt like inescapable lasers. Broad-shouldered and olive-skinned, with a thin mustache and a day's worth of stubble on his cheeks, Pinheiro unbuttoned his suit jacket and pushed up his fedora before he sat beside Travis. "That's some dog you got," Travis said. "Good thing for him you were there when the cruiser arrived. Usually the first cop on the scene puts down a dog that kills somebody. You wouldn't let Officer Kemp near him." "Her," Amanda said. Did Kemp tell you Marcella never bared a tooth at her?" Pinheiro nodded. "She didn't nip at the vet who tranked her either." "Because the vet you called is a woman too. It's men Marcella doesn't trust." She exhaled heavily. "Now where's my dog?" "Animal control," Travis said. "The shelter on Oak Street. She's got to be tested for rabies and other diseases." "The poor thing must be scared to death." "Shelter staff will take good care of her." Travis took a breath. "She has to be evaluated." "Evaluated?" Pinheiro sighed with exasperation. "Ms. Corso, she killed a man." "A man who broke into my house and might have killed me if I'd been there." "Doesn't matter," he snapped. "They have to decide if your dog's a danger to others. If she has what the law calls a vicious propensity." "A vicious?" Amanda pursed her lips. "She's a rescue. She's been with me just a few months. The only thing she knows about vicious propensities is people. Men, like the guys who tortured her. They whipped her and cut her and burned her and made her fight other dogs so they could bet on the outcome. Now other men in City Hall get to decide if she lives. Does that sound fair to you?" She snorted. "How long will all this take?" "Dogs don't kill people often enough for us to have a set protocol," Pinheiro said. Okay, I'm going to skip ahead now to the last section, which is Raphael Pinheiro. At 4 p.m., freshly shaved and in a clean suit, with that day's fedora on the coat tree behind him, Raphael Pinheiro was sorting files at his corner desk when a uniformed officer led Amanda Corso into the homicide squad and pointed to where he sat. Threading her way toward him as the uni withdrew, the reporter was in jeans and a blazer. Her hair was tied back, her makeup lighter than last night. She looked more natural, less combative, but still too confident. Raphael stood and shook her hand, noting her nails were a darker red today. Then he motioned her into a chair across from his and sat back down. "Max isn't back from court yet, but the DA gave his okay to share certain information you might feel more comfortable hearing from her. It shouldn't be too long if you want to wait." She answered softly, "Detective Travis is very impressive, but there's no need to wait." He smiled. "So it's all right with you if Dr. Watson continues?" And she referred to him as Watson earlier. "Of course. At least I'm not in the interrogation room." Okay. Would she understand, Raphael wondered, how close she had come to criminal charges? Dogs don't wait in the dark to ambush intruders unless they're trained to do so. "Our CSU has reconstructed how it all happened," Raphael said. "You found Forster on his back on the basement stairs. We can explain how we got that way." "That won't be necessary, Sergeant," she said. "I'm trying to get that picture out of my head. The last thing I need is a PowerPoint." Raphael nodded. "In any case, we have reason to believe Thomas Forster was the man who stalked you before." He pulled a folder from the stack on his desk and slid it to her. "I don't want to embarrass you, but Max found these in the subject's apartment." Okay, pictures. The only ones printed out. There are printouts of other women too, lots of them. We expect to find more when we search his computers. He frowned. Tom Forster was busy. As far as we know, none of his stuff made it to the internet, but clearly he was escalating, getting more dangerous. The next step was only a matter of time. He paused. "Next step as in sexual assault or murder." "I see," Ms. Corso said. "Hire a lawyer to have any shots that pop up online later removed," Raphael continued. "Also, you can sue his estate, though it doesn't amount to much." Just so you know, this is evidence and must be preserved, but won't be shared with anybody outside our investigation. He tapped a white sticker on the folder. So far, Max, me, a digital evidence tech, a detective from the sex offense squad, and the DA are the only ones who've seen these images. We're all listed on the chain of custody label. Cheeks no longer flushed, she sank back. Sergeant, I refuse to be ashamed or embarrassed by this creep. She slid the file back to him. What's next? Raphael swallowed, pushing the photos from his mind. We're homicide. It's our job to figure out what caused the death and if charges should be filed. After today, if you need follow-up, you'll contact Detective Jennifer Spina in the SOS. She'll have resources to steer you in the right direction. You implied there wasn't enough there to make a lawsuit worthwhile. Raphael nodded. On the plus side, with dead parents and no other family, his estate won't be suing you for wrongful death. He leaned toward her, fingers locked beneath his chin, eyes holding her. Imagine a lawyer discovers the dog in question had severed vocal cords to prevent barking. The only noise she can make is something like a faint cough. Imagine this lawyer concludes she was left in the basement because that's where the owner's previous stalker hid the base unit for his spy cams. Nobody can say for sure she was trained to wait before attacking, but that special doorknob spins unless it's pulled first and clicks into place. To leave the basement quickly, you'd have to know that. Your doorknob could mean a hell of a lawsuit, not to mention criminal charges. He sat back. New York has laws against booby-trapping your home, and dining with the governor doesn't get you off. Ms. Corso stared at him without blinking. It wasn't me who cut her throat. Which the DA pointed out when he said we ought to let sleeping dogs lie. A flicker of concern crossed her face, but he noted that she tried to mask it. No, he didn't. Yes, he did, because it would be difficult to prove in court you chose that rescue for any but humanitarian reasons. Raphael rolled the toothpick from one side of his mouth to the other. Max said you did local women a favor. She even suggested you name the dog after a man I used to watch on TV with my abuela when she visited from Puerto Rico. Her English was limited, so Poppy played VHS tapes of Marcel Marceau. Never made a sound, but he was funny as hell. Miss Corso was quiet for a few seconds, as if weighing what he had said. Maxine was right, she said finally. Her full name is Marcella Marceau. I named my dog after the greatest mime ever. I wrote a paper on him when I was in college. He could tell a story as thick as a book without a single word. He called it the art of silence. His body, his face, the precise rhythm of his movements. Then, abruptly, she grew quiet, as if she had said too much. Does this mean my dog will be put down after all? The silent hero of her own story, the watchdog who did her job? Raphael shook his head. We don't need bad press right now, but consider yourself warned for public safety, which includes a standard doorknob. Neither of you will get a second chance. For now, though, when they spring her, take her to a restaurant with a sidewalk patio before the weather turns cold and get her a steak. Treat her like she saved your life, because she probably did. It's what you'd do if she were your dog? Ms. Corso said. Yes, Raphael said, but the steak would be medium well, so what she remembers is the taste of the meat. Thank you. Lisa, take it away.
So I gave a lot of thought about what I should read tonight, and I started out writing short stories. What I'm most known for is my series set here in Buffalo about cold cases, but I've written short stories in all forms. I've written science fiction, I've written horror, and I've written everything in between. But this one, which has not found a home yet, I thought, sort of in honor of Susan, I thought I'd bring, because I really thought she'd like this character. And this, it has a working title, but I call it Wanda Canada. What in the world? Wanda Canada sat straight up in bed, her wild red hair sticking out in all directions like she combed it with a firecracker. Wanda Canada lived alone in a 2-bedroom cinder block ranch at the end of a dead-end street at the very edge of the reservation near Livingston. The town of Madrid, Texas, population 598, had wanted to extend a road all the way to the interstate, but the funds had dried up halfway through the project, leaving Wanda hanging out on the end of a road to nowhere. Wanda worked at the local bank, owned 3 spoiled cats, wore flip-flops to ease her bunion pain. She was 61 years old, 58 if you asked her confidentially, single by choice, and found great humor in the fact that her first and last name should rhyme but didn't. It's Canada, like the country, but don't you call me no Juanada. You leave that extra A with the B, she would laugh, coughing out clouds of Marlboro Red along with an odd fleck of tobacco. She also watched the true crime shows on the Clue Channel and fancied herself a good sleuth as any of those big city cops that were always sitting going on and on, sitting stiffly for the camera, talking in clipped voices about how they solved some grisly crime after messing up the whole thing first, of course. So when her next-door neighbor's boyfriend's crappy, broke-down truck rattled her awake at 2:48 in the morning on a Wednesday, she knew in her heart he was up to no good. His last name was Reedy, which made him suspect in Wanda's mind anyhow. The Reedy family had been bad news in their town for 3 generations at least, and Hammond Reedy was someone who took his family name seriously, someone not to be trusted, someone Wanda had to keep an eye on at all times, especially since Shelley, the girl who lived next door, had such a rotten track record with men. Her first husband had left her for one of the cashiers at the gas and sip, and he was no prize himself. Now Shelley was with Hammond Reedy. Ham, folks called him, the name fit. He was powerfully built and painfully ugly. He actually had a pig's face in Wanda's mind. Turned up little nose and little black piggy eyes. I don't know what any woman would see in that man, Wanda thought. Like Grandma Canada used to say, that man ain't a sight for sore eyes. He's the cause of them. Still, Wanda forgave Shelley because beggars couldn't be choosers. Not in their one-horse town. Madrid, Texas, was barely a blip on the map. It was a community of ranchers and farmers, far from the cowboy hat-wearing tourists or the beach bunnies of the coast. It wasn't kind of the place that drew quality men from afar. Wanda understood the any port in a storm mentality, even if she didn't subscribe to it herself. But a hard-working woman from a sound sleep, woken up, was bound to result in further scrutiny. Wanda stumbled out of bed and peeled back her bedroom curtain of hair. Ham's truck was sitting in Shelley's driveway. She could just make him out. It looked like he was fiddling with something on his lap. His head was down, almost making contact with the steering wheel. Wanda's breath was fogging her window, but she didn't dare wipe it lest she cause Ham to look over. Wanda knew he worked days at Stu Barton's concrete company. Stu's wife Leslie played bingo with her on Friday nights, and she was always complaining about Stu being around in the evenings. Why can't he do shift work like a normal man? Makes me have to have dinner on the table exactly 5:30 on the dot. I run home from working at the dry cleaners at 4 and spend the next hour and a half whipping up whatever meal the king decides he has ordained he should have. Leslie complained more on one occasion. If he worked overnights like my second husband, I wouldn't have this. I wouldn't just leave his dinner in the fridge. So it was not late night work keeping Ham up, nor was it a late night out with Shelley because Wanda had seen her Honda pull in around 6 and it hadn't moved. Bars in the county closed at 11 on weekdays, 2 on the weekends, so he hadn't been out on a bender. No, Ham was up to no good, and Wanda could smell it. And Wanda was watching. So after what seemed like an unusually long amount of time, but it was probably 60 seconds in reality, Ham opened the door, stepped down from the cab truck, and now Wanda let the window sheer fall to hide herself better. Ham was wearing a plaid, paint-stained denim overall over a plaid flannel shirt and heavy Timberland work boots, and he headed up Wanda's drive. As he headed up Wanda's drive, she detected a hitch in his get-along. Ham was limping. Ham mixed and poured concrete. He didn't paint it. Wanda noticed some kind of paint stains on his pants that looked almost red, like blood. Once he was in the house, Wanda waited a good 2 minutes before she went back to bed. She lay with the covers pulled up to her chin, mulling over what she'd just seen. Most people would brush it off as none of their business and leave it alone. But Wanda Canada was not most people. She knew things. What she knew about Ham Reedy was this. He had no business being out at that time of night. He had what looked like possible bloodstains on his clothes, and he came from a long line of local criminals. Wanda stubbed her cigarette out in Grandma Canada's blue ceramic ashtray. Shelley Santana was a nice girl, and someone had to look out for him. The next morning, as she sat, skipped a part, I'm sorry. Next morning, by the time both Ham's truck and Shelley's Honda were gone, from Wanda's back door, she could see across the unmowed grass to Shelley's rear porch, with its screen door hanging half off the frame. A real man would have fixed that for Shelley, Wanda thought, slipping out into the concrete slab in her backyard. That would have been a deal breaker number one right there for me. Wanda adjusted her white baseball cap, making sure to catch all of her home-dyed, rust-colored hair up so it poked out the back in a bushy ponytail. Then Wanda walked across the 10 feet of property that separated their houses without shame. Shelley had 2 little boys, 5 and 7, but they had gone off to school on the bus an hour ago. Wanda was free and clear to snoop as she liked. Not snoop, she corrected herself. Investigate. It wasn't like Wanda wasn't allowed on Shelley's screened back porch. Indeed, last summer her own washing machine had broken down, and Shelley had let Wanda come and go as she pleased to use the washer and dryer. Sure enough, when she slipped in, she walked over to the washer and pulled open the lid. Ham's overall and work shirt were laying at the bottom, half wrapped around the agitator in the center. Wanda looked around. On the shelf directly above the washer was a bottle of stain remover. That wasn't what she was looking for, though. A pair of blue rubber dish gloves on the shelf next to the bottle. She snatched them up, pulled them on, and then reached in the washing machine. After carefully unraveling the denim overalls from the agitator, Wanda held them up to the light. The overalls were huge in Wanda's hand. At least 2 of her could fit in there. Sure enough, dark stains spread across the bib, and as she looked further, she could see it ran down the legs. She brought the garment close to her face. Whatever had been in the denim had been scrubbed real hard. She dropped them back in the machine and closed the lid. She needed more information. It was time to have lunch at the diner where Shelley Santana worked. She hopped into her blue Ford Escape and headed off to the diner. It was almost noon and the place was half filled with customers. Shelley was working the counter, so Wanda grabbed his stool near the cash register next to Floyd Wiggins. "How you doing, Miss Candy?" he asked politely between stained yellow teeth. Farmer portrayed he had a terrible addiction to chewing tobacco, as evidenced by a nasty brown stain dribbled down the front of his dishwater gray t-shirt. Still, Wanda had had a beer or 2 with him over at Bixby's bar more than once or twice. "Just fine. It doesn't seem like September outside, doesn't it? So nice, not too hot." Wanda plopped her tote down and picked a menu off the counter and pretended to read it, even though she knew damn well the thing by heart. "What do you got in that bag, Bricks?" Floyd wondered aloud. "My phone, my wallet, my keys, my Mary Kay makeup bag, a can of Aquanet, change purse. Everything but the kitchen sink," he chuckled into his coffee. "Just the essentials," she corrected him and then said, "How's the farm?" "My apple trees are drooping. The branches are so heavy with fruit this year, she come by and pick you a bag." Wanda gave a non-committal smile as Shelley walked up with a chipped white coffee mug. "Hey, Wanda," the usual. She poured steaming black coffee into Wanda's mug in a sloppy brown splash. "I think I'm just going to have coffee today, Shelley." Wanda looked over at her young neighbor as Shelley tucked her order pad back in her front pocket of her pink waitress uniform. "What's different about you? You get your hair done?" Shelley pressed her lips together and glanced at Floyd, as if they were sharing some sort of wonderful secret. Then she stuck her right hand out and waved under Wanda's nose. "I got engaged this morning. Ham proposed and I said yes." Wanda looked down at the giant rock gracing Grace's fourth finger, and then back up to her beaming face. "Oh, Shelley, congratulations. Were you surprised?" She nodded, strands of her black hair coming loose from her bun that she wore while working. "Totally surprised. Ham was up early today, had breakfast on the table. As soon as the boys left for school, he got down on one knee and asked me to marry him." Her brown eyes were shining. She was practically beaming. "You're going to make a beautiful bride," Floyd told her, slurping more coffee. "Thank you," she guessed. "What do you think of my ring? Can you believe it? Isn't it beautiful?" It was big, and it was gaudy, and if it was real, there was no way in hell Ham Reedy could pay for a rock like that. But Wanda did the proper thing, taking hold of Shelley's hand and examining the diamond in Fox's admiration. "It's stunning, absolutely stunning." "I know, right? I can't believe it." Ham drove all the way to the jewelry store near Natchitoches. He said he didn't get in till late last night, and he wanted to ask me so bad he couldn't wait until the weekend. Wanda sipped her coffee. "You hear the other news in town?" Floyd asked, leaning over, like he had to keep his voice low. Wanda shook her head, absently, still processing the engagement ring. Floyd's bushy eyebrows shot straight up, like he was surprised. "Travis McCray has gone missing." Travis McCray ran McCray's Bakery down Main Street next to Lincoln & Sons auto supply shop, kitty corner from the dry cleaners. He was a younger guy, about 40, who had taken the bakery over from Old Man Washerman 5 years ago. McCray did all the baking himself, specializing in pastry and sweets. Wanda leaned back on in her stool. What do you mean, missing? I mean, Randy Garcia came by this morning at 7 to deliver flour, and Travis wasn't answering the door. Travis went around the back and found the side door wide open, a huge mess in Travis's kitchen. Travis was nowhere to be found. Randy called the police. The cop cars are still there if you want to drive by and take a look. Huh. Wanda considered the possibilities. Floyd took another sip of his coffee, draining the cup. He signaled over to Shelley, who was busy cleaning a table. She gave him a thumbs up and then lugged the mound of dishes back in the kitchen. Fumbling out a couple of dollar bills from the back of her lime green elastic waist pants, she put them on the counter. Tell Shelley I said goodbye. I'll see you around, Floyd. Don't forget your apples, he called to Wanda as she made her way out the door. We're going to skip ahead a little. So she goes and talks to the local police chief and then makes her way over to Stu Barton's concrete place down off the interstate across from Madison's Feed and Seed. The squat square building was all framed on all sides by huge piles of stone. The heap stretched out along the dusty highway and back to the fields like sloppy pyramids. Someone in the town named it Little Egypt years ago, and the name is stuck. As Wanda pulled up, she could see Ham's pickup truck parked in front next to Stu's BMW. Two huge concrete mixers were parked farther down the road. Wanda could see the barrels on the back churning. She wondered why they weren't in the back parking lot where Stu usually kept the heavy equipment. She pulled in right next to Ham's F-150, a lone dead-looking palm in the big ceramic pot next to the front door with fake Spanish moss dripping from the upper fronds obscured the Barton's concrete stenciled in black letter on the glass. The front of Stu's place was all windows, and unless he and Ham were in the front office with the door closed, it looked like neither were in the shop. She got out, making sure she had her bag with her. Immediately, she knew where Ham and Stu were. She could hear their voices yelling between the pounding bursts of a jackhammer out back behind the building. That suited her just as well. She walked around the driver's side of Ham's truck. The boy at the strip mall near Livingston had spent over an hour with her explaining all the features and gadgets on her phone, how to use the apps. She pressed her thumb to the screen, and the flashlight app came on. Without touching the vehicle, she shone the light around the interior of the cab. The back seat was a disaster. The front was a little better, but it wasn't the candy wrappers she was interested in. It was the Timberland boots splashed with something dark that were sitting in the passenger seat. She switched over the camera app and started snapping pictures. After she was satisfied, she leaned back and scrolled through the pictures, pinching them between her thumb and forefinger in a zoom. Wanda was just about to walk away when she noticed something on the running board you stepped on to get in the truck. She bent over to her, her nose was almost touching the dirty metal and inhaled. Wanda straightened up, lit a smoke, took one last picture, and headed toward the voices coming from the back. Walking around a sawhorse blocking the driveway to the back parking lot, Wanda noticed a sign stuck in the center. Caution, wet concrete, do not enter. She punched a few numbers into her phone and continued on. When Wanda rounded the corner of the building, the first thing she saw was the third concrete truck Stu owned, parked in the grass, backed up in the far corner of the lot, barrel rolling fresh concrete around, waiting to be poured. A jackhammer lay inside next to the truck, compressed air hose snaking all the way back to the building. Stu and Ham were standing amid the rubble of a newly torn up edge of the lot, trying to stuff what looked like a leg, complete with a black sneaker on the foot, into a hole. An arm, a hand, and part of a torso were scattered across the lot at their feet. Both of their heads whipped around with the sound of her plastic flip-flop slapping on the driveway. Wanda snapped a picture with her cell phone and then let it drop to the ground. Stu and Ham straightened up. What the hell are you doing here? Ham demanded, advancing toward her. Wanda whipped Grandma Canada's .357 Magnum out of her tote bag and drew down on Ham. I've been a concealed carry permit holder since 1989, Ham and Reedy. I know how to use this gun. Ham stopped mid-stride, hand shooting up into the air at the sight of the huge cannon pointing at him. Wanda, Stu said, angling himself, trying to block the view of poor Travis McCrae's severed leg. This ain't what it looks like. It looks like you and Ham Reedy are about to entomb Travis McKay parts and pieces in the concrete here in your back parking lot, Stu Barton. Everybody knows your wife Leslie was fooling around with Travis. I work at the bank and I know you can't afford to get divorced. So you put this dim bulb up to killing poor Travis because everyone knows if a wife gets dead, the husband's the #1 suspect. You gave him that gaudy engagement ring and he went over last night and killed Travis for you while you were snuggling with Leslie. Stu's voice got desperate. That's all wrong. She had no patience for his lies and cut him off. I bet this big dummy brought Travis's body here last night, not realizing this was a two-man job, then surprised you this morning. You got no proof I did nothing, Ham growled, taking a step closer toward her. Chopping guys up is hard work, especially when they're fresh. She took a long drag from her cigarette with her free hand. the blue smoke curling around the rim of her baseball hat. Poor Stu here probably broke the blade on a circular saw trying to get through the bone. Stu visibly gulped and tried kicking the hand into the hole. It missed the opening by a good 2 inches, and he sidestepped in front of it as if Wanda would have noticed. I seen you last night out my window when you pulled in with that awful noisy truck of yours, she went on. I thought you were covered in blood till I went by the bakery, and then I knew for sure what you did. Ain't no blood on me or my clothes, Ham responded. Wanda nodded, gun bobbing up and down in time with her head. You got that right. It ain't blood that stained your clothes or all over your truck. It's batter, with red food coloring. Today's special was posted in the front window. Red velvet cupcakes. And I must say, your vehicle smells delicious. Ham made a furious grunting sound and started to come at Wanda with that hitch in his get-along. She cocked the hammer on the huge gun, stopping him short. I wouldn't do that, she cautioned. I bet you got that limp in the fight with Travis. It's good to know he went down swinging. Yeah, well, Ham glanced back at Stu, who was furiously trying to kick Rubble over the exposed leg with his foot. There's only one of you and two of us. If we charge you, you might be able to shoot one, but the other's going to get away. And I ain't going to jail because Stu was too chicken to handle his own business. Stu, you with me? Before Stu could answer, Wanda ruffled up. When that nice young man at the cell phone store sold me my phone and my Indostructo case, I never thought it'd come in handy in a moment like this. See, I just watched an episode of Solving the Crime on the Clue Channel, where a girl heard a man breaking into her house and dialed 911 and left the line open. She gestured to her phone lying on the ground in front of her. I dialed 911 while I was walking up. They record 911 calls here, too. All this is on tape, and I'm sure the police are on their way right now. Hammond charged at her, but Wanda took a shooting stance, cigarette dangling from the corner of her mouth, put the bullet right through the toe of his filthy sneaker, blowing off most of his front left foot. The kick from such a gun would have been too much for most women to handle, but she absorbed the hard jerk and promptly brought it back to aim. Ham dropped to the ground, clutching his foot. Blood poured out from the ragged hole in the sneaker, puddling on the hot concrete. You crazy witch, he howled. Still, he tried to get up in one desperate last attempt at best Wanda Canada. Ham Reedy. Don't you tempt me again, she warned with a frown, pointing the gun down at his crotch. He fell on his butt in horror as the police siren wailed in the distance. Red velvet cupcakes were my freaking favorite. The end.
We need an anthology of Buffalo crime writing. Trying to cut back on things as I get older, but part of me is saying, let's do this. We'll talk. Thank you all for coming out tonight and hearing what Buffalo has to offer. I've been on the board, I'm off now, but the Board of Mystery Writers of America, the New York chapter, for the past 4 years. And finally, they're starting to recognize that in a chapter that covers 5 or 6 states, there are lots of groups that are not located in New York City. And so they're trying to organize things so that other groups can get some support. So I will have more to report on that later. Again, thank you all for coming, and I'll turn the program back over to Gunilla.
Thank you all. For once, I did not bring a single thing of my own to read, so I'm sorry if you're disappointed, but you can go to my webpage and read all you want. And that's it. Next month, I think it's May 15th, we'll have the open read. Sheldon, you should definitely bring some poems. We always do this. Usually we do it in April, but because there was a conflict that then didn't become a conflict, whatever.
Welcome to my reading.
This person here is one of the most flexible, easy, professional people I know who has bent over backwards. Now I want to share with you our meeting, because it was at the old screening room, which those of you who are familiar, was a very huge, quite dark room. And I had just written 2 poems in English for the first time. I was new in Buffalo, and a friend brought me, Marlene. Martinez Seraph brought me to this reading, and I stood up and I was petrified, and I read my poems. They were both later published in the Buffalo News. But then I went back to my table. I had some popcorn and a beer. That's what you get at the screening room. And I saw this man, and he came weaving through the tables in the dark. And I swear to God, I had only had one beer, but around his head was a crown of blue flames. And I stretched up my back and I said, Gunilla, watch out, here comes royalty. And it was Gary O. Ross, and he handed me a little piece of paper, which I still have, and it said, finally, a real poet. And it was like he gave me permission. You know, all writers talk about this, that somewhere along the line there was somebody who opened the door or gave permission to keep writing. And because it was all new in English, and my Swinglish back then was, you know, it's still here, but anyways, thank you, Gary. It's been a wonderful journey to get to know you and Tammy and your family, and think about Iraq and your sons and writing something for this Consequence Forum. Check it out when you have time, if you have time. Anyways, thank you all. No poetry tonight, but lots of it next month. I think it's May 15th. So, thank you. It was a wonderful evening. A little more exciting than normal. I'm sorry? That's my stuff.
Oh, yours. Your
This
glasses.
is, but the glasses are mine.
Okay.
Yes, and this is, computer is mine. And here's our new address. I can just give it to you like this. Our phone numbers are the same.
Koshirian family.
Good.